In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups: the globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
Over to you.
Point of order.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier, my comments from my colleague, Mr. Jackson, he made some very concerning comments regarding somebody potentially doing something that is very much against our rules in this committee. And so I'm just wondering, I know you are holding back on providing any kind of guidance on the point of privilege from my colleague, Mr. Jennis, but perhaps could we have an update on that? Like, this is very serious. People are not allowed to take photos of these proceedings. And so if a photo was taken, has it been deleted and deleted from the deleted file? And do we have assurances from the WHIP's office?
First of all, I'm not holding back on anything. I took Mr. Janis's point under advisement earlier. On the point regarding the picture, I take this very seriously, as I did then and I do now, but you know where I've been sitting since the issue was raised half an hour ago, and I have somebody looking into it, and I'll let you know as soon as I find out. So, Mr. Rowe, over to you.
Yeah, but before I get into it, I think this is a point of order as well. There was an accusation made to a Conservative colleague that he was making fun of someone's language here. It was very evident that we were, having a discussion about the merit of the conversation and the debate, and I think it was very insulting to both my colleague and Wade Chang here, who speaks better English than many people, probably than myself, right? And his perfect English, and I think it was insulting to even say that we were making fun of his English when he speaks perfect English. And I think that that kind of language is not appropriate, and those are big accusations to be made towards members at this table. And I will continue on, whether it was a point of order or not.
I take your comments very seriously, and as the point I made earlier, I take that very seriously. And if I see you or any other member in this committee, whether it's on your side or the Liberal side, I will address it. I saw what I saw. We can review the tapes. Let's move on. I understand your point. Thank you.
Okay, but point of order, Mr. Chair. The question of whether this photo does or does not exist, whether it has or has not been, we just got back from being gabbled. I am very concerned. This allegation was brought up at least 15, 20 minutes ago. You're telling me that no one from the Liberal Whip's office has been able to
investigated. I've been sitting in this chair.
The
I went to
information
the
and get it
bathroom on
back
the
to
break.
you.
I will give you an answer as soon as I have one. I have more than one person looking into it. Raising the point over and over again isn't going to accelerate the process. Mr. Rowe, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been the last few hours and few days trying to get words to paper on this issue, and it has been challenging because it's so frustrating. My leads and my pencil keep breaking. And there's this, it's so frustrating because you've got to ask yourself why. You know, as my friend Grant Jackson mentioned, our ancestors fought for freedom of religion. They went overseas and they fought. They were in the trenches, shoulder to shoulder fighting. And it was alluded by some members of the Liberal caucus that we may be here during Christmas and over the holidays. And I think they said it sarcastically, maybe they never. But, you know, if that's what it takes to make sure that we're fighting for freedom of religion, I know I'll be here. And I'm willing to bet there's going to be 3 or 4 or half a dozen, maybe even dozens of Conservatives that will be here shoulder to shoulder with me. And because it's the least we can do out of respect of our ancestors, out of respect for all Canadians and all people in the world who fought for freedom of religion. And we will continue to do that. And I know I will be here come hell or high water. You know, it's very strange. I'm not here to argue, although my passion may seem that. I'm here to try to bring some reason. When C9 was introduced, I would ask myself, what's the purpose of this bill? It almost, is everything that the bill tried to do, current laws could already do. So it was very interesting. And it almost makes me wonder if this whole amendment backroom deal with the bloc was the actual intent to actually confuse Canadians so that they wouldn't understand what the amendment was, because the amendment wasn't released until later. And a lot of times things like this happen amongst confusion, and it's very difficult. So I'm hoping that we can make some clarifications and things, and I think we've made some clarifications tonight. And you may say, Jonathan, no, things are very clear. But we've got a situation where the PMO Prime Minister's office said that the committee went rogue and made a backroom deal with the Bloc and gave Mark Miller, but yet they gave Mark Miller a promotion after saying the outrageous thing that the verse in the Bible should be considered hate speech. I mean, he alluded that he believes there are certain verses that could never be used in good faith. So after that comment was made, they promoted him to be a cabinet minister. How is that? How is that not in line? You would not promote someone that went rogue. So I find it very hard to believe that this was against the PMO's wishes. And then what we see here tonight is that Bloc amendment was actually voted on. So if it was a rogue agreement against the PMO, why was it voted on yesterday? And to me, that shows the need of Mr. Lawton's amendment to make sure that religion of freedom is protected. And it's very, very important that that is. So I made a video and put it on my social media a while ago, sounding the alarm on C9 and the Bloc amendment. And what was interesting was there was very much confusion and people saying, well, Jonathan, you're spreading conspiracies, you're spreading misinformation. And I'm thinking, gee, I wonder, am I? And I looked in the mirror and I had a hard conversation with myself. Maybe I'm in the conservative echo chamber. Maybe I'm on Parliament Hill every day and hearing, the circle of echo chamber. But then I see that we have 23 news articles. And pretty well every one of them is against C9 in one way or the other, or raising alert about C9. So I don't think I'm in the echo chamber. And then I did manage to get this on paper, and I want to read it out. There are so many groups in Canada, the same groups that this bill C9 and the amendment, they say it's a Trojan horse. Oh, this bill is going to protect these groups, going to protect religious groups. The same religious groups that says it's going to protect are the ones coming out against it. I mean, we have a broad nationwide coalition of religious, civil liberties, labor, and community organizations have mobilized against C9 and the proposed removal of the religious text exemption. Among faith groups, dozens of Catholics, dioceses, and parishes, led by the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, have issued coordinated calls to action joined by multiple Jewish and Sikh advocacy groups, and by 40-plus Muslim and Palestinian community organizations in joint statements, warning of threats to religious freedom and civil liberties. Multi-faith networks have also weighed in, with a cross-country coalition of more than 20 Christian, Muslim, Jewish, and secular justice organizations signing a unified appeal to halt the bill. Civil society opposition is equally extensive. A 37-organization civil liberties and legal coalition led by the BC Civil Liberties Association has condemned BC9 as a threat to protect rights, academic freedom, and due process, while national labor bodies, including major public sector unions, have warned that the bill will criminalize legitimate worker and community demonstrations. So it's just mind-blowing that this is not just conservatives waving blowing the horn. This is the whole country is speaking out. And I would not want to, I don't know how you can get here in this committee and say that there's no need for Andrew Lawton's bill, for amendment to this bill. And then we see that they're talking two sides of the mouth. Oh, well, we don't need this. It's okay because it's protected under Charter rights and freedoms. Well, if that's the case, if religion of freedom is protected by Charter of freedom, why not have Andrew Lawton's bill introduced? And why take out the religious exemption to begin with? So I will leave it there for today. Maybe I'll come back another day and express some more concerns. But thank you very much, Chair, for having me.
All right, thank you. Back to Mr. Janis.
Well, thank you, Chair. I do have a lot that I want to say on this subject, but I'm also so encouraged by the fact that we have 14 Conservative MPs that are here. It's after 10 o'clock here in Ottawa, and we have a committee needs 4 Conservatives at any given time, and I count around the table 14 Conservative MPs that have come out to fight for freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And I want to encourage folks at home that that there are so many conservatives, far more than need to be here, that want to be here to fight for your rights and your freedoms and to oppose this attack on religious liberty. So I've already spoken a bit tonight. I'm going to cede my time now because I want to hear what so many of these other great folks around the table have to say. But Chair, I'll ask you to re-add me to the list at the bottom, and also, if you can, before we go to the next member, give us an update on your deliberations on how the Justice Minister violated the privileges of this committee by leaking confidential information, and when you plan to make a decision on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Janis. Okay, who we have? Mr. Lawton. Sorry, I couldn't read the writing.
I think members of this committee will know that I think freedom of religion and freedom of expression are incredibly important issues. And I've said on the record, and I will say again, that Conservatives will stand firm and defend these fundamental liberties for as long as it takes. But I want to reiterate, in the interest of working across party lines, in the interest of collaboration, that we would much rather focus on issues that are not so divisive and toxic and, quite frankly, unconstitutional. We would love nothing more than to not have to debate my amendment to Bill C-9, that a specific carve-out is needed defending freedom of expression and freedom of religion. So at this time, I move to proceed to clause by clause, or move to consideration of Bill C-14, so this committee can do work that is far more relevant to Canadians in fixing the broken Liberal bail system.
Okay. What's the motion again, Mr. Lawton? Sorry.
That we proceed to consideration of Bill C-14, the bail legislation.
It's a dilatory motion, so yes. Over to you.
Can everybody here just vote?
Ms. Latancio?
I'd like to continue on C9, so my vote is no.
Mr. Chang?
No.
Madame Dillon? No. Mr. Housefather?
No.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Hold on. Who's he here for?
He's here for Baber.
He's here for.
Yeah. Mr. Brock?
This is exactly what Canadians want. My vote is absolutely yes.
Mr. Gill?
I would say strong yes to this because C-14 is very important and this is what we need to do at this point.
Mr. Lawton?
We need to fix the bail system. I vote yes.
Monsieur Fortin?
No. Okay, so Mr. Lawton, thank you. So we're now on to Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to just say I speak here in honor on behalf of the people of London Fanshawe, but also for all Canadians, as attacks on freedoms is detriment to the democracy we live in as we speak. When there is concerns with regards to the freedom of religion and freedom of expression on the table, I, like my Conservative colleagues, will stand up shoulder to shoulder to defend the freedoms that all of our Canadians do not take for granted, but we do take it as part of the day-to-day process of being Canadians. With regards about myself, yes, I was recently elected as Member of Parliament for London Fanshawe back in April of this year, 2025. But I come from a small town of Forest, Ontario, in between London, Ontario and Sarnia, and it is a population of 2,800. Forest is famous for being the oldest running movie theater in the world. It was opened in 1917, just before the age of the talkies, and the reason I bring up the opening age of 1917 is yes, it was Canada then, and we had the freedom of religion. Fast forward to 2025, and now there's concerns at this committee where we will lose freedom of aspects of freedom of religion and also freedom of expression. On top of that, growing in a small town, I went to an elementary school a Catholic elementary school where, yes, it was a Catholic elementary school, but we did learn the various religions that are in modern Canadian culture even to today. Various Christian religions, Catholicism, baptism, Anglicanism, the United Church that my fellow colleague MP Jackson mentioned. There's also religions of Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, Buddhists, etc., etc. And now we stand here at this committee with concerns about those religious freedoms. And that is why I'm speaking here with the concern regarding Bill C-9 and the block amendment of BQ3 and the attack of freedom of religion and freedom of expression. The concern that people of faith could be imprisoned for expressing deeply held religious beliefs that the government finds offensive. What the government may find offensive is so vague, it is alarming. That's it. Just whatever the government may find offensive. And so on that note, there's a few items that stand out. Though some may find these beliefs objectionable, old-fashioned, or even hateful, a free country does not criminalize the expression of sincerely held religious doctrines. 2, we debate. As a civil democracy, we debate people we disagree with, not silence or attest them. 3, the courts have been clear that violence and calls to violence are not and never have been protected as free expression and are not in good faith as the defense requires. And 4, this change will expose people of faith to criminal prosecution for the simple act of quoting their own sacred texts in person, in public, or online. I also want to share some testimony quotes that was shared with the committee. First of all, from Derek Ross, Executive Director of Christian Legal Fellowship. And he says, quote, "The courts have been very clear that one cannot simply embed a hateful message in a so-called prayer and expect to receive the benefit of that defense. The courts have specifically said that it is not permitted." Second quote, from Noah Shack, Chief Executive Officer, Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. I'll just say that the jurisprudence is clear that the religion defense cannot be used as a Trojan horse to allow otherwise hateful speech to come through. And another statement on regards of Imam Adil Chakari. He committed at least 2 offenses. There's the willful promotion of hatred against an identifiable group, and he has also committed the offense of inciting hatred against an identifiable group likely to lead to a breach of the peace. I heard the position was taken that he was expressing a view on a religious subject. That's nonsense. The defense would not be available to him. It wasn't made in good faith, and it was simply the willful promotion of hatred. That quote comes from Mark Sandler, one of Canada's most respected and prominent criminal lawyers. So additionally on that note, inciting violence from one person to another group or another person is already embedded in the criminal code, not protected by freedom of religion. So with regard to this bill of C-9, why are we even here tonight? What is the point of this bill when the aspects that we're debating about is already part of the criminal code? And I also want to add, I've received many letters from my constituents in London Fanshawe, and I want to share one of the letters that was emailed to me. It was from a gentleman named Paul. It says, Bill C-9 represents an unacceptable assault on free expression in Canada. This bill would give the government the power to criminally prosecute Canadians for their opinions, lower the bar of what legally constitutes hate, quote unquote, and strip away vital safeguards that keep authorities from weaponizing laws against dissenters. It risks turning controversial memes into crimes and silencing open debate through fear of prosecution. As a constituent, I urge you to take a clear stand for freedom of expression and do everything in your power to stop Bill C-9 from becoming law. And to Paul, again, I am here at the Justice Committee. I'm agreeing with you that we have to defend the freedom of religion and we have to defend the freedom of expression. We, as in my conservative colleagues, standing up for these freedoms. And as I close, another concern I have is the Liberals and the Bloc going down a slippery slope, slowly taking away these freedoms. And I have to ask, what's next? It is December. It is the holiday season. Should we be concerned that the role of singing traditional Christmas songs, will that be viewed as hatred? Like, for example, the songs that we hear every year, such as O Holy Night, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, All Come All Ye Faithful. And I'm not talking about just Christian songs. Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song, which has been around for 30 years now. If I sing that, do I have to fear of being prosecuted, going to jail, going to prison? So I just want to end on saying I applaud my colleague, MP Lawton, for his amendment, and I'll say the amendment, quote the amendment, for section 6.1, nothing in this section is to be interpreted or applied so as to interfere with the freedom of expression or the freedom of religion, as myself and my fellow conservative colleagues are protecting as we sit here tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Okay, Ms. Jansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I must say I am disappointed that I have to be here to speak to the need for religious freedom protection. But I'm very thankful to my colleague, Mr. Lawton, for the amendment that he's put forward to actually protect that freedom of religious expression. There are days in Ottawa when the bills we debate come and go, barely remembered by the time we leave the committee room. And then there are days like today, days when the very soul of our country is at issue. Because what we're really dealing with right now is not a technical adjustment or a procedural tweak or a footnote in the justice system. What we're debating is whether Canadians should be free to speak from their conscience or whether that freedom can be stripped away because a government of the day finds those beliefs uncomfortable. Today's one of those moments that will be remembered long after the politics of the day have faded. A future generation will ask us what we did when they are going to ask us what we did when the freedom to speak one's faith was put at risk. Incredibly, the Liberals and the Bloc have struck a deal to remove key safeguards in the criminal code, safeguards that protect Canadians who speak in good faith about their religious beliefs. Safeguards the Supreme Court of Canada has already said are necessary to keep our hate speech laws constitutional. Necessary, not optional. After the amendments supported by the Liberals and the Bloc passed, we're now in a situation where key safeguards in the criminal code have been stripped away. Safeguards that protected Canadians of faith. Those protections existed for a simple reason, because people of faith in this country hold deep, sincere beliefs about morality, about human nature, about right and wrong. And some Canadians agree with those beliefs, while others disagree. But in a free society, we debate ideas. We don't jail people for them. With the earlier amendment now adopted, the risk is real that people could be investigated and prosecuted, even face up to 2 years in prison, for simply quoting a verse from the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, the Guru Granth Sahib, the Vedas, or the teachings of Buddha. In other words, quoting the very scriptures that shaped their lives. Mr. Chair, this is not the Canada our grandparents built. This is not the Canada my family came to from the Netherlands after World War II, or the Canada generations of immigrants chose as their home because this country promised something rare in the world, freedom of conscience and freedom from religious violence. That's why Mr. Lawton's amendment is so important. His proposal would add a new subsection 6.1, making it clear that nothing in this section is to be interpreted or applied so as to interfere with the freedom of expression or the freedom of religion. This amendment doesn't undo all the damage of the previous change, but it does put a clear statutory road sign in front of prosecutors, judges, and police. When you apply this section, you must not trample freedom of expression and freedom of religion. It's a line in the sand that says, on the face of the law itself, that these charter rights still matter. Now, the Bloc and the Liberals have justified their earlier amendment by pointing to the case of the Montreal imam. In 2023, he prayed for the extermination of Jews. What he said was vile, anti-Semitic, and hateful. And it was already illegal. There's no religious defense for advocating genocide, and there is no religious defense for public incitement of hatred. The authorities could have charged him, should have charged him, and they failed to enforce the law. And that failure is now being used as an excuse to criminalize ordinary Canadians who simply express their faith sincerely. You don't fix one injustice by creating another. We're now left to mitigate the damage. Mr. Lawton's amendment is one of the only tools left to this committee to send a clear message that Parliament does not intend this section to be used to interfere with core freedoms. I want people to picture something for a moment. Imagine a mother standing at a school board meeting reading a passage from her holy book, trying to explain a belief that her family has lived by for generations. Imagine a priest or a rabbi or an imam preaching a sermon drawn from their ancient texts. Imagine a Sikh leader explaining a teaching that's over 500 years old. Imagine a Hindu teacher quoting the Bhagavad Gita. Imagine a Buddhist sharing the words of a sutra. In the wake of the amendment that's just passed, those Canadians are now looking to see whether Parliament will offer any reassurance, any guardrail at all, that they will not be treated as criminals for speaking from their own scriptures. This is what this amendment does. It doesn't solve every problem, but it tells them this section is not supposed to be used to interfere with your freedom of expression or your freedom of religion. What troubles me even more, Mr. Chair, is what was said in this very committee last week. The Liberal Chair, Mark Miller, looked at scriptures cherished by billions of people, the Bible, the Torah, and said there is clear hatred in them. He singled out Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Romans, and then he said prosecutors should be able to press charges when Canadians quote those books. Think about that. A senior Liberal in charge of shaping our laws believes quoting scripture should be grounds for criminal prosecution. If you want to understand why we need Mr. Lawton's amendment, it's exactly because those are the kinds of views that will guide how this law is interpreted. Without some explicit protection, we move toward a country where the government decides which verses from the Bible are acceptable, where the state chooses which teachings of the Quran may be spoken aloud, where prosecutors decide which parts of a sermon are safe and which are hate. Mr. Chair, when the state starts policing scripture, it's no longer protecting citizens, it's controlling them. We already see this pattern across the country. In Ontario and elsewhere, doctors with religious objections to euthanasia have effectively been told, violate your beliefs or leave medicine. In Quebec, the government has already banned many public employees from wearing religious symbols. Now they try to restrict public prayer in parks, revoking accreditation from religious schools, scrub religious symbols from communications. They say it's neutral, but neutrality that bans faith is not neutrality at all. It's state-imposed secularism. There's an old Dutch statesman and thinker named Abraham Kuyper who wrestled with this exact problem more than a century ago. How a diverse society protects freedoms when people don't all believe the same things. Kuyper would tell us something very uncomfortable for modern governments. There's no such thing as neutral regulation of speech. When the state claims neutrality, but quietly decides which beliefs are acceptable to express, it's not neutral at all. It's picking a side. Secularism, for all its polite language, is not an umpire. It's a worldview like any other. And when the state permits every ideology under the sun, political, cultural, even extreme, but suddenly tightens the rules when speech is rooted in faith, the problem isn't religion. The problem is honesty. A society that allows every belief except religious belief to speak freely is not pluralistic. It's selective, and it's pretending otherwise. True pluralism doesn't protect only comfortable speech or carefully edited convictions. It protects speech that's real, lived, sometimes unpopular, speech that actually costs something to say. That's the whole point of freedom of expression. And that's why we should all be cautious, very cautious, about vague hate speech laws that are untethered from objective harm. Because when freedom depends on saying the right things, it isn't freedom anymore. A government confident in a pluralistic society should not fear religious voices. It should trust Canadians enough to hear them and strong enough to govern them without silencing them. Here in this Parliament, instead of resisting that trend to prohibit free speech, the earlier amendment raced to meet it. Mr. Lawton's amendment is, at the very least, a way for this committee to say, we've gone too far, and we need to reaffirm in black and white that freedom of expression and freedom of religion still matters in this section. Let me say with the deepest conviction, when a government declares that faith must retreat behind closed doors, it shackles the soul of its own people. Imposed secularism is not neutrality. It is the state asserting its own creed, insisting that the wisdom of our past, our ancient writers, must change, allowing a single arrogant generation, which is a tiny slice of history of the world, to impose its small ideas on the past, present, and future of mankind. We ignore our ancestors' wisdom at our peril. History teaches us a hard truth. Time and again, we see that oppression comes dressed in the language of progress, safety, and uniformity. But beneath that language lies a quiet demand that the principles of the individual must bow down. It is the cold hand of power reaching into the conscience and soul of citizens, demanding obedience. And once that line is crossed, the state does not stop. It grows bolder. And a people who once spoke freely begin to whisper instead. When coercion enters the public square dressed as tolerance, we must speak with courage and clarity. Mr. Chair, witness after witness have told this committee that the good faith religious defense was narrow. It didn't protect extremists. It didn't protect violence. It didn't protect hatred. It simply protected sincere people of faith who speak honestly from their traditions. That fence has now been removed. The least we can do is build another safeguard, an interpretive safeguard that tells courts and prosecutors not to use this section to interfere with fundamental freedoms. I want my colleagues to understand this. Freedom of religion is not a niche freedom. It's not a private hobby. It's not something you do only in your home or your place of worship. For millions, it's the framework of their life. It's their moral compass. It's their sacred duty. It's the source of courage, forgiveness, charity, perseverance, hope. This safeguard has existed in law for decades. It's not some Harper-era carve-out. A Liberal-era parliament under Chrétien chose to expand, not shrink, the ability of people of faith to express good faith opinions based on their scriptures. Successive governments, including the current prime ministers, left that safeguard in place for 2 decades. No federal government, Liberal or Conservative, moved to repeal it until now. For the first time, a government is now not just enforcing hate speech laws in case of genuine extremism. It's stripping away the explicit protection for good faith expression rooted in religious texts in the criminal code's hate propaganda provision. This is a major shift. And if we're going to do something that serious, the very least we can do is adopt Mr. Lawton's amendment to signal that Parliament does not intend this section to be used to trample freedom of religion and expression. So, Chair, for all of these reasons, I support Mr. Lawton's amendment. It's not everything we wanted, but it's an important line of defense left to this committee. I would urge colleagues, whatever your party, whatever your ideology, whatever your personal beliefs, to ask yourselves a simple question. Do I want to live in a country where this section can be interpreted in a way that interferes with freedom of expression and freedom of religion? Or do I want the law itself to say that it must not be interpreted that way? If the answer is that you value those freedoms, then I would respectfully urge you to vote in favor of Mr. Lawton's amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jansen. Okay, now over to Mr. Mantle, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to Mr. Lawton's amendment. I want to begin by saying, I come to this committee, and I think most come to this committee this evening with a shared goal of combating hate acts and acts that propagate or normalize hatred. I think that is a laudable goal. I think that is a goal that is shared by all parliamentarians, regardless of political stripe. But unfortunately, the amendment that was passed to Bill C-9, which Mr. Lawton's amendment seeks to undo rightfully, the Bloc and Liberal amendment doesn't do that. And that's why we need Mr. Lawton's amendment to bring us back to safety. I came to Parliament, Mr. Chair, for many reasons. Of course, to represent my constituents and residents in the riding of York-Durham, but also to defend the liberty of Canadians, of all Canadians across the country. And I'm glad that I did, because I have seen time and time again a pattern of anti-religious and anti-Christian bigotry from this government. And they may call themselves new, but they are just like the old anti-Christian bigoted government.
Hear, hear.
Whether it was a values test to receive summer jobs grants, whether it was this amendment to remove an integral part of our hate speech and anti-hate framework, whether it was to seek to remove the charitable status of religious organizations. Time and again, when given the opportunity, the Liberal government chooses anti-Christian and anti-religious bigotry. And so I'm glad that I'm here to defend the liberty of all Canadians to express their faith and their sincerely held religious beliefs. And that's exactly why the protection of the defense in Section 319 of the Code is needed to protect and defend Canadians from the type of attacks that we have seen from the Liberal government. And it has been described as a defense, Mr. Chair, and it certainly is listed as that in the Code. But I think there's another way to review or look at this provision, and it's an integral part of our entire anti-hate framework. It's not just a defense. It's not just a defense because the idea that we circumscribe the freedom of expression, the fundamental freedom of expression, I'll remind members that it's in the Charter, it's listed as a fundamental freedom, and we should give effect to that, and we don't. To curtail those freedoms requires careful balance. And the inclusion of this defense is an integral part of that. And the inclusion of it was a powerful signal by Parliament to Canadians and to the courts that the expression of sincerely held religious beliefs, including those based on a religious text, should not be subject to criminal sanction. And so it is equally a powerful signal, Mr. Chair, when Parliament decides, or as the Liberals and the Bloc members have decided, to remove that protection. That sends a signal to Canadians and to the courts that that protection is no longer afforded to people who express those beliefs. And when Parliament acts through legislation, courts are required to give that effect. That's a basic premise of understanding and interpreting our law. So for the Liberals to suggest that this doesn't mean anything and which freedom of religion is already protected, as the minister did in his letter before this committee tonight, is fanciful, wrong, ignorant, and is frankly unfortunate that the Minister of Justice would hold such view. Now, there have been accusations by the Liberal members of hate against Conservatives. I see it all the time in the House. And now we see the Liberals and the Blocs going to remove protections from those who express religious beliefs. And so I wonder if accusations of hate can now be prosecuted if we are coming vanishingly close to the idea of prosecution for a difference in political belief and religious belief by one party over against another. And I want to say, Mr. Chair, that I and my Conservative colleagues will defend Canadians' freedoms to debate, to challenge, to criticize, without fear of sanction or censure by Liberals, by Bloc members, or by anyone else in Canada, their freedom to express their sincerely held religious beliefs, including from their sincerely held religious beliefs derived from a religious text. And so as long as I have to sit here, Mr. Chair, for as many nights and as many hours as you wish to hold up your own agenda with this bill, I will be right here defending Canadians' liberties. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Okay, Mr. Brock, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is my third intervention of the night, and I want to share a personal story in this intervention. I think a few colleagues have probably heard this before, but I don't know if my Liberal colleagues have, or whether my Bloc colleague has heard this. But I really enjoyed my time as a Crown prosecutor. But I was seeing things in my small community that upon reflection was happening in communities right across the country. And I saw firsthand, post-2015, the ever-increasing crime levels. There was a point in my career where my city of Brantford, the largest city in my riding, approximate population of about 115,000, hadn't had one homicide on its books in about 5 years. It was something that we were very proud of as a community. But what I saw was the ever-increasing tide of organized crime moving from the GTA to southwestern Ontario. And before you knew it, we saw an increase in drugs, we saw an increase in weapons, we saw an increase in human trafficking, an increase in violent stabbings and shootings. And before you know it, homicides were on the rise. When I left the Crown's office in 2021, we had 12 homicides on the books, of which I had carriage of 4 as the senior Crown attorney in that office. But I came to the conclusion that I was muted as an Ontario public servant in terms of advocating for change. I knew what was wrong, and I don't want to get into those issues because those issues are going to be properly dealt with whenever we get to the study on C14, but possibly tomorrow. But bad Liberal policies and bad Liberal laws I saw firsthand. And I said, if I'm going to be an instrument of change, I'm going to have to do it as a legislator. I couldn't do it as a public servant for the province of Ontario. So I left. And it has been my #1 mandate since my election in September of 2021 to be that instrument of change. And I have been advocating strongly for 4+ years, pushing the government, recommending to the government, actually sitting down with the new Justice Minister, literally within days post-election after our return in the spring, sat down with him for close to an hour and a half, gave him a laundry list of ideas that could immediately improve community safety across this country. I said, steal my ideas, take it, call it your own, I don't care. As I said earlier, I'm going to repeat it again, community safety ought not to be a partisan issue. But never did I think, as I've been singularly focused on community safety, never did I think, as a proud Christian, as a proud Catholic, never did I think I would have to defend my faith in the people's house, in a G7 country. But that's what I'm forced to do today. And I'm absolutely proud and honored to stand shoulder to shoulder with all of my colleagues here today, a collection of veterans, a collection of my colleague Melissa Lantsman and I were elected in 2021, but a lot of new members who are stepping up and will continue to step up to fight for freedom of expression and freedom of religion. I think if one thing can be said right now to the Liberal bench is that we will never give up. We will be relentless. I will sit till Christmas Eve if we have to, if resources are available. I will sit between Christmas and New Year's Eve. I will sit post January 1st, 2026, and we will continue to fight for Canadians' right to practice, to preach without fear of this Liberal government's intrusion. I had the honor, since the announcement of this secretive deal being brokered last weekend, I had the honor of attending a Catholic Mass this morning, and it was an invitation by my colleague Garnet Genuis. It was held in the Father O'Sullivan Chapel in East Block. It was to commemorate the celebration of Juan Diego. Juan Diego is remembered as the first Indigenous saint of the Americas. The appearance of the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe on his cloak in the 1500s astonished the Aztec people and has inspired centuries of scientific study of the time, the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, today honored in Mexico City. As I sat there, I was pondering the homily given by the father, the priest. I listened to scripture read by a lay person. I looked around. Not only did I see conservative colleagues, but I saw liberal colleagues. And instead of being inspired by the word of the Lord, the first thought that came across my mind is, did that priest say anything that could be deemed to be offensive, that could somehow now attract criminal prosecution? And the reason I said that is because, you know, our Minister of Heritage and Culture, who did a disastrous job with our immigration file, had been promoted to the front bench, notwithstanding his vile, extremely offensive comments to any Christian in this country, to determine that various books in the Bible are deemed, in his words, to be offensive and worthy of prosecution. I was deeply offended by that. So, to echo the words of my colleague, Mr. Lawton, you know, we can continue this. We are not going to give up. I think the Liberal bench should know that by now. But what we can do as a committee is do something collaboratively and something that Canada has been asking for close to a decade. Something that I have championed over the last 4 years. So with that in mind, Mr. Chair, I am resurrecting my motion to prioritize the consideration of Bill C-14, the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act, and work together to report the bill to the House at the earliest opportunity, and I'm seeking unanimous consent at this time. And I just heard a no from the Liberal member, Anthony Housefather.
Thank you, Mr. Brock.
That says everything that we need to know, that they do not prioritize, have never prioritized
Thank you, Mr.
community
Brock.
safety. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Housefather.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Are you done? Okay. All right. Enough. Ms. Lantsman, you have the floor.
I'll take my time on the floor if the Liberal members opposite stop obstructing the
And your colleague to
committee.
your left. It's happening on both sides, to be fair. So.
The obstruction on the committee, frankly, of studying and of looking at the Liberal bail system, which we have talked about over and over tonight, as not seen as a priority. In fact, it's odd to me that that Liberals would stand in the House and talk about the obstruction of their own Liberal bail laws while obstructing their own legislation at committee by prioritizing what we learned last week, and we'll start from the beginning. We learned last week as a secret deal between the Liberals and the Bloc to eliminate the obvious safeguards that we've had in this country for a number of years, for a number of decades, on the expression of religious freedom. And when you come to Parliament, I think if you grew up in a background like I think many of us grew up in communities, I was raised by my community and indeed my family who moved to this country, frankly, so they didn't have to practice religion behind a curtain, like candles under floorboards, which is both dangerous, but obviously what they would have had to do in the Soviet Union, to be able to practice freely. And I'll have to say, over the better part of the last 2.5 years, we've seen, particularly in the community that I represent, that I come from, an explosion of anti-Semitism. We've seen gunshots into schools. We've seen fire bombings into businesses, protests on a weekly basis in residential neighborhoods. And this is what this is predicated on trying to solve. The problem is that C9 doesn't do any of that, and it wouldn't stop any of that. And it is sad that trying to convince a community coming in at the 11th hour, remember when Bill C9 was introduced, it was a day after the government recognized a Palestinian state. That's exactly why C9 got to an announcement when it did, which is shameful in its own right, to try to distract from the absolute vitriolic relationship that this government has created with the Jewish community and a longstanding Democratic ally. That's why C9 was introduced. But particularly on this amendment, there is no reason why anybody should come here and fight on behalf of their community. Fight the scourge of anti-Semitism in the community, fight what's going on in the streets, fight what's going on in the schools, in our universities, in every institution, in labor unions, in our university faculty clubs, in police forces themselves now, if you don't do it on the basis of something that you believe. And taking away the right to believe that, I think, is a very, very big problem in the country. And I don't think that anybody would fight the fight that our party, that our leader, that I have been fighting for the better part of 2 years, if they didn't do it from a place of deep religious belief. Because this isn't about a state or a conflict on the other side of the world. It is rooted in the value of Torah and religious scripture, not necessarily if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, if you're Hindu, if you're Sikh. If you're not fighting for the things that you believe in, and if you're not fighting on the basis of that, and you're not fighting to protect it, then there's no point of doing any of this at all. And that's why I think Mr. Lawton's amendment is important. What I don't understand is how it could be interpreted as anything other than the protection of freedom. Anything other than the protection of freedom to believe what you want to believe. Because none of what has been expressed by either the Bloc or, frankly, the Liberals now who have aligned themselves with the Bloc, who used to stand up against this stuff, none of this would have been, none of what they have said would be prosecuted would actually have been prosecuted. Like this was already against the law. And we see in communities over and over again, every weekend after every weekend, and I'm oftentimes the only one to stand up and denounce it. And at great peril. And it's because fundamentally I believe that you should be able to practice your religion in this country. You should be able to hear your religion preached. You should be able to teach it in school because it is a fundamental value of why we fight for the things that we fight for. I'll tell you, my background is not dissimilar to the background of so many other Canadians. My parents came here from the former Soviet Union. My father was an uncredentialed engineer. He drove a taxi, put my mom through school. And in one generation, you go from the front seat of a taxi to the front row of Parliament Hill. That can only happen here. And one of the fundamental reasons they moved here is so that they can be who they wanted to be, practice the religion that they wanted to practice out in the open. So they weren't subjugated into a corner where Jews, frankly, in the Soviet Union were subjugated to punishment or, frankly, much worse throughout history. They came here for one of those freedoms. They came here to be able to raise their children the way they wanted to be able to stand up for what they believed in, and to be able to have that protected in law. And to watch the party that once believed in all of those things too line up with the Bloc and put all of that in jeopardy, you have to wonder if saying anything at all against hate in this country is ever going to be worth it with members opposite in this committee. We've said these things, we've defended communities at great peril to our own safety, to the safety of our families. And I think all of that is worth it. And I think all of that is worth it, predicated on the fact that you would be protecting the fundamental freedom to believe what you want to believe in this country. And I don't have to believe what everybody else believes, and nobody has to believe what I believe, but I should believe in the right to protect it, because without that, we lose it all here. Mr. Chair, I think that Mr. Lawton's amendment on this is critical. And it is critical to send a message to all Canadians who have faith, those, frankly, who don't, to tell the world, to tell the rest of the G7, the G20, if you will, that this is a country based on the rule of law, democracy, freedom, the values that we used to hold as shared values. And I wouldn't want to think that the last 2 years of advocacy on behalf of any community, whether it's the community that I come from or any other one that I have stood up for and fought for, would be in jeopardy because the Liberals want to make a deal with the Bloc. I can't imagine that anybody who has stood up for their community could support such an amendment, would support making a deal to eliminate any of the safeguards of something that is the critical center of the way in which many of us were raised, in the way in which many of us live in our communities, interact with our communities. If the thought that you have ever going into a place of worship is what that person is saying, what the clergy at the front of the room saying, criminal or not, I think we have a big, big problem in this country. And we will sit here day after day and hour after hour. And I have spoken to 50 rabbis today, and I will speak to 50 more before tomorrow is over. And they too will express their concern on this. They too will express the same concerns that all clergy in this country will express on this piece of legislation, or on this amendment, frankly. We haven't even gotten to sort of how it all started in the rest of Bill C9. But to all of those watching, particularly in the Jewish community, if you think this legislation will protect you, it will not. It will be used against you. It will be used, the very same people who purport to protect the community will use this legislation against you. It happened on Bill C-63, and they were wrong on that. You cannot have freedom in this country when you curtail freedom. You cannot have safety and security for a community if you are going to pick and choose which verses out of which books you are going to defend. And I will not stop sitting here, not a single hour of a single day. My life has changed over the last number of years, and it's for standing up for a community and a community that I believe in. And there is no chance that being under 24-hour RCMP protection is ever not going to be worth it. I will continue to say the things out loud that many of my colleagues and many in government and far too close to government do not have the courage to say. And I will never be silenced from saying it, not by this amendment and not by any piece of legislation that we will ever allow to come through this House. So with that, Mr. Chair, I am happy to have other colleagues who have come here, who have canceled all of their plans, and I'm sure are happy to cancel all of the rest. And for those who can't do this on Christmas Eve, I am happy to fill that role. I can do it on Christmas Day. I can do it every other single day of the week, and I'm happy to sit in for my colleagues who have stood up for me when this government did not. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to cede my time to many of the other Conservative members that are here fighting for your rights.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Ms. Lantsman. Okay, we have Mr. Jennis again, and then Mr. Viersen.
All right, Chair. I think I'm going to be brief again and go to the bottom of the list because I know Mr. Viersen is eager to get in on this, and I was going to preempt his comments by discussing how the investiture crisis was more important for the development of notions of separation of church and state than the Reformation was, and I know he would be interested in that. But I'll pick up on that later on. So if you can add me to the list again right after you update the committee on how you're planning and when you're planning on ruling on the Minister of Justice's violations of the privileges of this committee by leaking documents that were clearly the property of the committee. So if you can provide an update to the committee on when you're going to rule on the Justice Minister violating the privileges of this committee. And after that, I look forward to hearing from Mr. Viersen and then following up once it becomes my turn again.
I'm going to ask Mr. Lawrence to get a pen and paper and write down, it's under advisement, so every time Mr. Jennis speaks, you can just slide it in front of him for the rest of the evening. Thank you. Mr. Viersen, we're pleased to have you at the Justice Committee. I've been a member of this committee for some time, and we've been anxiously waiting you to appear. In fact, we're trying to get you to come here last year for your own private member's bill, which was the last time the Conservatives filibustered this committee. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm not Wade Chang, so if I could just get, I did try to take it down, but I would just like it to be either moved over or out of the, thank you, sir.
What are you doing?
Well, sir, could you, I'm not Wade Chang.
I'm a regular member of this committee.
That's
Mr. Viersen, I addressed you as Mr. Viersen.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Let's not make a mockery of the proceeding. You have the floor, please.
I'm not making a mockery. I'm just noting.
Please go ahead.
I'm just noting that my name is not in front of me, and it says Mr. Wade Chang.
That's your business.
That is not my name. And so when it shows,
we've established that now.
Yeah.
You've known that for your whole life. We now all know that, and so does everybody watching the committee now. So if you want to address the amendment at hand, do so. Otherwise, I'll move to the next speaker.
Chair, is this another matter of privilege? Could you take this under advisement as well?
May not have been worth it.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate that you know who I am and what my name is, and I'm appreciative that you recognize me.
Now it's in front of you, so you'll make no mistake yourself. Go ahead. Just keep looking at it, and you remind us. Please move on to the amendment. Thank you.
If we're supposed to take this seriously, so are you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, with the absence of my name, there, it would look like Mr. Chang was speaking to folks that don't know who Mr. Chang is or who I am, and so I was just trying to remove his name from my shot. You will notice that he is not in this shot as I am, so thank you. And that is, however, my name is now there. We should be good to go forward. And that was never my intention.
Mr. Viersen, this is very enlightening, but please get to the point.
Your
name is there. We know your name. Everybody knows your name. Get to the point,
Mr. Chair, this was never my intention to raise this. I was merely trying to move his name out of the picture shot, and that started an argument that I was
And
not.
you did it in a very rude manner.
Well, I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I was a witness to it.
To my.
The only person rude is Mr. Chang.
I do not know. I had a plan of where to begin, and this is not it, and so I don't know where to begin now. Nonetheless, Mr. Chair, I would like to address the amendment brought forward by Mr. Andrew Lawton. I don't know about you, Mr. Chair, but I don't remember the first time meeting Mr. Lawton, but I do remember listening to Mr. Lawton on a podcast for a lot of time. And so now, even today, when I hear his voice, I think I'm still listening to a podcast, and oftentimes I'm listening to him through one of these earpieces, so it gets me a little discombobulated. But I'm really excited that he is our new colleague here in Parliament, and so I welcome him here. Now, I remember one of the first conversations I had with Mr. Lawton when he got here, and it's always fascinating to me to ask new members of Parliament what they did before and like what motivated them to come onto the field, so to speak. And he said to me, well, defending freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and freedom of religion have been major motivators for him. And I took that for what it was, and I appreciated that, as these are things that I care about as well. And I reflected upon what had motivated me to get involved in the defense of the province of Alberta, the defense of firearm owners, the defense of the Christian faith, were all things that had motivated me. And yet, often you do not get to tangibly capture those things. And so tonight we're debating an amendment by Andrew Lawton, which does precisely the thing that he came here, what he told me he came here to do, was to defend freedom of expression and freedom of religion. It is not often, Mr. Chair, that you get to come to Parliament and do, in as many words, exactly the thing that you came here to do. Now, the fact is that Mr. Lawton made this decision to become a member of Parliament and to pursue that probably many years ago, like probably at least 2 years ago. And Mr. Lawton knew that this was a threat. He knew this was a threat more than 5 minutes ago, more than whenever he got to draft this amendment. He knew that this was a threat, and that's what motivated him to run. And so I guess that speaks a little bit to the trajectory that the Liberal government has put this country on. That speaks to when we open our eyes and look around us, see what's happening to our country. Mr. Speaker, I sit on the Veterans Affairs Committee, and we've been dealing with veterans' mental health and the things that drive them to take extreme action. And one of the things that they say is that they don't know what they fought for. They don't know why. They don't recognize the country that they come back to. And I think that's what Mr. Lawton was motivated by as well, is that to build a country that's worth defending, to build a country that I don't know where his grandparents came from, but my grandparents moved here from the Netherlands after being liberated by the Canadians, and they moved to a country that was going to defend freedom, that was going to defend freedom of religion, and that was a motivator for many people. And so I appreciate that Mr. Lawton put his name forward to run for our party. As I think we have been the defenders of freedom of religion. I remember when I first got here, Mr. Speaker, one of the first things the Liberal government did was shut down the Office for Religious Freedom. It had a special ambassador dedicated to the defense of freedom of religion. One of the first things the Liberal government did. Now, the Liberal government has not been known to be a spendthrift government. They have been known to run deficits for as long as I've been around here. They said they were going to be modest deficits. That has definitely not been the case. But they did not seem to have fiscal responsibility in their repertoire. But nonetheless, the thing they had to cut right off the get-go was the Office for Religious Freedom. And so perhaps that was one of the tipping point, the thing that Mr. Lawton noticed is like the religious freedom of expression is under attack. We've seen multiple things coming through through the Liberal government, through the courts, and the Liberal government failing to defend it when it comes to religious freedom. We've seen prolonged attacks upon religious organizations with the summer jobs attestation. And again, in that situation, the Liberals deny and say that's not what's actually happening. And then when it eventually comes out that no, that is indeed what's happening, then they back down, pay millions of dollars out to organizations who had sued the government. And then you'd think that would have taught the government a lesson around that with the Canada Summer Jobs. But no, the next year they take a run at it again with a separate form, a checkbox, and on the Canada Summer Jobs initiative. Now, it seems that they've backed down on that, but then at the Finance Committee, they brought forward two recommendations from the Finance Committee to revoke charitable organizations of their charitable, or religious organizations of their charitable status. And so those are just like the very tangible things. But I think Canadians from across the country have felt the push from this government to relegate religious practice, religious thought, to inside of buildings, inside of places of worship. And now they seem to be concerned about what even goes on inside those places. I do recall, Mr. Speaker, it was a tradition in the past that the police wouldn't enter places of worship. And then we've seen during the pandemic that police were ready to enter places of worship. So the state encroachment on places of religion, freedom of religion, I think it is with good reason that Mr. Lawton told me that when he first got elected that he was motivated to protect these things. And so I am happy to support the amendment from my colleague, and I look forward to the time when we'll be able to vote on this as well. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Veerson. Mr. Gill.
I'll go to the bottom of the list and cede my time for other fellow members who want to speak.
Okay, that takes us to Mr. Jivani then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I speak, of course, in favor of Mr. Lawton's amendment. You know, tomorrow morning there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of churches across our country that open their doors to feed their neighbors. There will be hundreds, if not thousands, of churches across our country who open their doors to offer counseling to heartbroken couples at risk of separating. There will be hundreds of thousands of churches that open their doors to help people overcome addiction and a whole host of other challenges. And the message these churches should be receiving from their government is respect, encouragement, and gratitude for the services they provide for struggling people and for people who need hope. And instead, what they are getting from their government is ridicule, disrespect, and outright attacks on their foundational beliefs, the very beliefs that motivate them to be good citizens and good neighbors, good fathers, good mothers. It's kind of a crazy situation we find ourselves in to even be having this conversation. And in the process of disrespecting these very important Canadian institutions, we have seen hypocrisy exposed on the part of two political parties in this room. On the part of the Bloc Québécois, we see a political party who says they are very concerned about the overreach of the federal government, and yet comes here to Ottawa begging for that federal government to have more power over the people who send them here. Shamefully. Yeah. On you. You are a hypocrite.
Oh.
On the part of the...
All right, Mr. Jivani, I know you just arrived an hour ago. We had a discussion, a thorough discussion earlier on about language and decorum. Oh. And people from all sides agreed not to be making accusations and using language like that.
Oh, so I wasn't here to make that agreement.
Well, okay, but nonetheless, you said it, and it's inappropriate. So I'm going to ask you to apologize.
Oh, that's not going to happen.
All right. Well, then we'll move on to the next speaker. Mr. Lawrence, you have the floor.
Point of order, Chair.
No. What's your point of order? What's your point of order?
It's a point of order, Chair. Chair, first of all, there is no precedent for calling the specific language that Mr. Jivani used unparliamentary. Members are welcome to disagree with it, but the whole discussion in this bill, I think, is about the fact that speech you might disagree with is not necessarily speech that should be made illegal.
Yeah, Mr. Janis, you're now getting to debate. You've made your point of order.
I'm debating the matter of order.
No, you've made your point of order. You're now in a debate. I'm going to stop you from speaking now. Mr. Jivani called a member of Parliament a hypocrite. He did not, and I'm moving on to the next speaker,
Point of
which
order.
is Mr.
I was
Lawrence.
also going to call the Liberal Party a
Jivani
party
is
of colonizers and
welcome. Mr. Jivani
imperialists.
is
So
welcome
just to
add
add
his name
that
to the
too.
speakers list later on. It's
Sure,
late
please
in the
add me
evening.
to the
We're
list.
not going to tolerate that type of behavior. Mr. Lawrence, the floor is
Happy
yours.
to say that again.
Challenge your ruling.
Point of order.
Fine, you can challenge my ruling. That's your right. Chair?
There is a standing order that allows us to be appealed directly to the Speaker if you deprive him of the floor. You probably don't know that, but it was adopted as part of a provision that Bardish Chagger brought forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Genis.
You're welcome.
The chair's ruling be sustained. Madame Latanzio.
In favor.
Mr. Chang.
Yes.
Madame Dillon. Mr. Housefather.
Oui.
Mr. Jackson.
No.
Mr. Brock.
No.
Mr. Gill.
No.
Mr. Lawton.
No.
Monsieur Fortin.
Oui.
Hey, come on, Jim.
Okay.
Your decision is sustained.
All right, Mr. Lawrence, you have the floor. All right. Mr. Lawrence, please.
I wish to confirm Mr. Jivani's comment that the Bloc are hypocrites.
All right, we'll move on. We can do this all night if you want.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Holman, yeah.
Point of order.
Ms. Lantsman, yeah.
Mr. Chair, is there a list of words that you can provide the committee that you're not okay with?
If you're going to sit here and call another member of Parliament a hypocrite, then yes.
I believe that
keep
he
doing
called
this all over.
he did not
did.
call
Anyway.
another member of Parliament
I've
a
ruled on
hypocrite.
it once. I've ruled on it a second time.
This is not the same thing.
We can,
Mr.
well, what's
Chair.
your point of order then?
My point of order is whether there is a list of acceptable words in this committee. Is that where we're at now?
It's not an exhaustive list, so, all right.
What
Thank you.
is the list? Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Holman, you have the floor.
No, point of order. It's the same incident, but it's a different point of order.
Okay, let's hear it.
You ruled on Mr. Jivani's comment. We
Yep.
challenged your decision and moved on. The comment made by Mr. Lawrence was not impugning an individual member. He made a general comment about a party. There is no precedent at all that I'm aware of and no standing order that prohibits that, and it is certainly not the same as what you ruled on in the previous member's intervention.
Okay.
We are free in this House and in this committee to make a range of comments
Okay,
about parties
you've
broadly,
made
which are not about
point,
people.
Mr. Lawton. That's no longer a point of order. We're getting into debate.
It is a point of order.
Mr. Holman, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I was really enjoying the speech that Mr. Jivani was saying. I was wondering, may I yield my time to allow the gentleman to continue with his speech?
No, we'll continue with the speakers list if you want, though, if you don't want to speak.
Get back on it, Jamil.
Okay.
Monsieur le Président, point d'ordre.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
Go ahead, Mr. Fortin.
Président, je n'ai
Mr. Speaker, I did not hear my colleague, Mr. Jivani, apologize, and I didn't hear him withdraw his remarks. So I would call for him to withdraw his remarks and for him to apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Fortin, and that's exactly why I took his time away and moved to the next speaker. He refused to apologize, so that's why I moved on.
speak louder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He refused to apologize.
Yeah.
He refused to retract his comment, and which is why I moved on to the next speaker.
This is, okay. Okay.
Okay, we're back to Mr. Genis.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if I'd be allowed to read a scriptural text that calls someone a hypocrite, or if that would be also deemed unparliamentary and illegal under the relevant legislation. I actually wonder, since I think Mr. Jivani is coming up on the list again, that I'll ask you to re-add me to the bottom of the list and strike my position for now.
Put it this way, Mr. Jivani is not going to speak again until he retracts those comments.
Okay. Well, Chair, then I would like to raise a question of privilege, because it is not merely a matter of order, but it is a matter of privilege that members be able to speak before committee. It is clearly not. And I know, look, you're relatively new in your position, but your authority as chair is not in right of you as an individual. It comes from the rules. It is a reflection of the office that you hold. And there have been multiple occasions today when you have not respected established rules. And, it is an established principle that members have a right to speak. And if you deprive members arbitrarily of the right to speak, if you end their time, deprive them of the floor, these are matters that are appealable directly to the Speaker of the House. I regrettably can't remember the specific standing order, but someone will tell me in due course, and I know it's in there, that when, uniquely in the case where a member is cut off in speaking, that members can appeal directly to the House, to the Speaker, who can overturn the judgments of the chair and nullify all subsequent proceedings. In any event, this is a matter of privilege. Mr. Jivani is a duly elected member of Parliament. You're welcome to disagree with him. Mr. Fortin is welcome to disagree with him. But he has a right to speak. There are plenty of instances where members, I can think of where Mr. Erskine Smith dropped a few F-bombs at a committee in the last Parliament, and he was encouraged to be more appropriate in his language, but he was not deprived of his rights as a member of Parliament. You cannot simply decide to deprive someone of their right to speak because you don't like what they said. That is a violation of their privileges. So I would encourage you to consider whether this is a matter touching on privilege, and if you find that it is, I will be prepared to move the appropriate motion.
Well, Mr. Janis, let's do it this way. I've been in this position of chair at this committee for a week now. I have served as a committee chair for over 6 years. I notice you've never sat in a position as a committee chair. There's a reason for that, I suspect. Nonetheless, I think that in the circumstances, suggesting that I've been denied anybody an opportunity to speak is verging on laughable, considering we've been here for 7 hours listening to people speak over and over again. This might be your 10th or 11th intervention. I've lost track. So it's an accusation with no merit. Having said all that, I think what is the best course of action right now, our resources end in a few moments. I'm going to suspend this meeting for the day.
Chair, I've raised a question of privilege. You got a rule on the question of privilege.
Meeting suspended.
That I just played with.
The first round is for 6 minutes, and we have Ms. Lewis. Good morning and welcome for the first round of 6 minutes.
And thank you for being here today. Across the country, municipalities are being encouraged to approve new housing developments, but many of these communities simply do not have the infrastructural capacity to support housing developments. My riding of Haldeman Norfolk, which is a rural riding, for example, has a development in a town called Port Dover, and that has been stalled because of insufficient water capacity and wastewater capacity to support the approved housing. Does the development track how many housing units across Canada have been approved but cannot proceed because of insufficient infrastructure, such as water, wastewater, and power?
Thank you very much for the question. I don't have that actual number with me. I would say the number is high. We certainly know that it is a principal issue identified by municipalities, and that is why we are delivering the Community Housing Infrastructure Fund, which actually has as its sole objective to increase the water infrastructure to enable housing developments to move forward. And to date, we have actually done, there's two streams to that, one of which is a direct delivery stream that actually has allowed for 190,000 potential units to be built. So it's contributing to improving that capacity.
And I thank you very much for that honest answer, because I think it's obvious to municipalities like counties like mine that it's the federal government is encouraging municipalities and approving housing even though there is insufficient infrastructure to sustain those homes. And that causes a lot of friction within the community, because you have developers wanting to build and then you have those saying, well, we don't even have enough infrastructure for the existing homes. So even though the government makes announcements to approve housing builds, you can't start building those homes because the supporting infrastructure just doesn't exist. Isn't it a fact that the federal government currently doesn't have any single coordinated program, even though you have these programs that you've announced? You don't have any way of coordinating and integrating housing approvals with the infrastructural requirements that are needed across the country.
So the municipal levels is obviously where housing approvals happen, right? Though that's where permitting takes place. I would say we do actually do a lot of coordination with both provincial governments and municipalities to understand where their housing infrastructure needs are. I mean, that's largely what we've done through these programs. Typically, we don't, municipalities won't approve new housing zone permits unless they know that the infrastructure is going to be there. So we have, as we have been running the programming, a real keen eye on where those municipalities want to build out. And there's a lot of dialogue going back and forth. And I would say, so the department largely does that sort of traffic control. We do it with CMHC, and we're now doing it with Build Canada Homes as well.
Okay, so you've stated that that something does exist. Is there a name for this coordinated program? And how does this program ensure accountability across municipalities that these funding announcements are actually translating into housing starts?
So we don't have a program name for this. I mean, this is Housing Infrastructure Communities Canada. This is part of the mandate of the department. We have a policy lead on housing, and the government has put housing and infrastructure together for exactly the reasons that you outlined. So it's sort of it's our day job. It's not just one unit inside of the organization that looks at that.
Okay, let's turn to something which is also very important that people are very concerned about, and that's affordability in housing. The average housing cost in Canada has risen dramatically over the past decade. And for many Gen Zs and millennial Canadians, the dream of owning a home seems increasingly out of reach to them. How does this government expect the dream of owning a home to remain attainable for the next generation, especially when housing starts are so low and the supply is so low, and largely because of infrastrucral funding? How does the government expect for that dream to become a reality?
So I want to just acknowledge at the outset that you're absolutely right, that it has become harder for especially younger Canadians to make the down payments. We've seen the number of weeks increase that people have to save in order to make their down payment. So 100% agree with you in terms of your assessment, your diagnosis. And I think that's been largely what has motivated investments that the government has made federally and provincial and municipal governments. Like, I think it's important to recognize it's a shared accountability across different levels of government. And so provinces have made investments, municipalities have made investments, and federal government has made extensive investments both through the housing plan that was put out most recently with Build Canada Homes, the national housing strategy that goes back a decade, and then obviously policy initiatives like what we've seen through targeted tax relief. GST.
And these policy initiatives, how many units does the department estimate will actually enable those infrastructural investments? How many units do you project to come out of those policies?
To just specifically on infrastructure investments?
Yes.
As I mentioned, the program that we have is the Community Housing Infrastructure Fund, and our estimates are just through the direct delivery projects that we've done, which is around 65 projects, that it's over 191,000 potential units. Most of the money went to provinces, so they are the ones who now select and determine what are the projects. So we'll know as we review the projects, approve them, how much inventory, how much potential housing they're adding in.
So there's no preset number of housing.
Thank you. Okay. Each 6 minutes, and we begin with Mr. Redicott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all the witnesses for being here today. Madam Brassard, I want to start with you. I want to talk. You said that the file review process was not related to the Auditor General's report in 2019. Yet that seems to be when it was initiated. Can you clarify that for me?
As I said, the process existed since 1983, 93. So it was called different ways, and it had different names, but it was not, so it existed for a long time.
Okay, so it did not start in 2019, it started in 1993, from what you said.
In one form or the other.
Okay, so now I just want to focus on the low-risk part of this, because in that Auditor General's report, they mentioned that they suggested that you optimize procedures based on low-risk countries. And yet the list of countries that was published at that time had a lot of countries on there that to me are not low-risk, like Afghanistan, Iran, Russia, Syria, North Korea, these kinds of countries. So how do you define low risk?
Well, I wasn't there when the initial, that list that you're
talking. Are you responsible for the department?
I'm responsible for the board, sir. So, and I'm really happy to do that. So, yes, let me go back to the list of countries and claim types that I'd
my
like
question,
to go back
to repeat the question, it's not necessarily the countries that are there, but the countries that I listed, to me, they don't sound like low-risk countries, and yet you're claiming that they are low-risk countries. Can you clarify that?
Well, you mentioned
North Korea.
North Korea does not have
Iraq, Syria.
Sorry, maybe I'll step in on North Korea has never been a less complex country. We actually take the position that North Koreans can be considered for citizenship in South Korea, so it has actually never been part of that list.
Can I just interrupt for a second? I have the list from 2019.
Sit
it says
down.
Less complex claims in North Korea is on that list. Is this wrong? This document wrong?
We've never approved a less complex claim from North Korea. We, in fact, only have 2 claims in our entire inventory on North Korea.
So this document from IRB was incorrect then, is what you're saying? So
it was potentially an evaluation done at the time, and that evaluation may have changed over time.
So is there a current list now? Is there a list of these countries?
We don't look at it from this perspective. As I mentioned earlier, we look at country and country types and claim types, and we look at acceptance rate of 80% at full hearing as a starting point. And so there's never a real established list. It's a guide to look at where the kinds of countries that we would be considering.
So based on what? Is you're looking at less risk based on what?
If the acceptance rate is 80% at the full hearing.
Let me stop you right there. Acceptance rate of what? Of all people?
Of the claimants from that country.
So it is country-based then?
Well, we look at the country.
Like it's either country-based or it's not country-based.
Well, it's not only country-based.
So you said it's not country-based, and now you just said it's country-based. So which is it?
It's a gong show.
We look at the claims that we have. And then we look at the acceptance rates, and the easier way to start is country and then claim types. Because claim types will vary from each country within a country. And some claim types could get high acceptance rate, and others just about never accepted.
So what's a claim type?
A claim type, for instance, it can be whether religion. Is the group persecuted because they're Christian in the country, or because they're apostate? So that's a claim type.
So all, How do you know? So you're saying that all Christians from Afghanistan is a certain category, and if those people, for as an example, would be automatically approved. Is that what you're saying?
We're saying, let's take that example. So we know from the documentary evidence that Christians in certain countries are facing hardships and persecution. So that's a starting point to look at it. But I stated 4 or 5 criteria, and we need to go through all of them to decide whether that claim would effectually.
Let's go to a different place here.
Yeah.
Rules 26 and 27 of the Refugee Protection Division rules require that an asylum hearing must be halted if issues arise relating to fraud, false identities, war crimes, serious criminality, etc. Is that correct?
1 minute.
Yes, we have to, and we do. When we see something, we say something, and that's why we will stop the hearing and
right.
ask
So this
the
rule
members
exists so that the Minister of Public Safety or the Minister of Immigration can intervene to protect Canada's national security if something arises during the hearing, correct?
When it does during the hearing, we inform the minister.
And under the file review policy, refugee claims can be accepted without a hearing and without any questioning of the claim. Is that correct?
If the minister did not intervene.
Okay, and so if no hearing takes place and no questions are asked, the notification mechanism for those ministers in Rules 26 and 27 cannot be triggered. Is that right?
The minister has, and my colleagues can testify to that, they will look at the claims before it even gets to the IRB, before they refer it to the IRB. If they detect issues around security, if they detect issues around identity, they can tell us, and they do tell us that when they decide to intervene. And when that's the case, it doesn't go to the paper process.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brassard and Mr.
Well, I'll turn it over now to Mr. Balsillie. You have up to 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you for the invitation to appear today. Your study is important and timely. I encourage you to also include economic considerations in this nexus because the economy and our security are two sides of the same coin. Canada's policy thinking remains rooted in the 1970s, an economy that no longer exists, which has caused a systemic erosion of our prosperity and productivity over the past 35 years. Recent strategic actions of leverage against Canada by multiple large nation states have laid bare that our sovereignty and security were concurrently eroding over the same period because of this outdated thinking. The digital transformation over the past 35 years has created a new kind of economy in which wealth, power, and security are rooted in the ownership of intangible assets of IP and data AI. These assets behave differently in the market than tangible goods and require different strategies. As shown in Appendix 1, they have grown to dominate, making up over 92% of the S&P 500's $55 trillion total value. As summarized in Appendix 2, the tangible and intangible economies operate in opposite ways, with the intangible economy of negative rights and economic rents governed by domestic and international frameworks that are constantly changing to create winners and losers, thus incenting strategic behavior, including leverage. I will summarize the examples I present in the ensuing appendices, where the US, EU, and China have developed sophisticated capacity and strategies to utilize these legal frameworks to advance their prosperity and security via value-added products and process technologies in the realms of defense and critical minerals. Then I conclude what Canada needs to do urgently. In Appendix 3, I list examples of how in 2025 the U.S. advanced their interests via legal frameworks, such as their AI White Paper, Genius Act for tokenization, an array of tariffs, and the flexing of IP march-in rights. In Appendix 4, I summarize how the U.S. national security strategy integrated these into one document, illuminating the role of strategic standards, adding resource security, including critical minerals, and much more. In Appendix 5, I show that while we were aware of the recent high-profile U.S. exit from 66 international organizations, they doubled down their participation in 3 international standards organizations that govern value chains for advanced products and process technologies for critical mineral and defense sectors and many other sectors as well. In Appendix 6, I note how the U.S. Patent Office concurrently created a working group to create and insert more patents from their SMEs into global standard organizations and by extension into global value chains, all to lock in and profitably grow their companies. Appendices 7 and 8 illuminate aggressive U.S. tokenization strategies for both financial and real-world assets, including critical minerals and mines. Appendix 9 summarizes how the EU uses standards, particularly via CENELEC, for the value chains for defense and critical minerals, just like the U.S. and China do. Appendices 10 and 11 show soaring granting of patents for mining, defense, and AI, with Canada essentially absent. Appendix 12 summarizes how China has strategically built dominance in critical mineral value chains of processing, patents, and standards alongside traditional supply chains of mines. As you can see, Canada requires a wholesale reorientation of how a sovereign nation must be governed in the 21st century economy if we want greater global scale from our promising companies and gifted entrepreneurs. The strategies I have identified today are all and strategies, not or strategies, when it comes to capitalizing our natural resources, but they are technical and require expertise. Absent these updated approaches, Canada will again not achieve better outcomes for Canadians. The November federal budget and the recent defense industrial strategy were missed opportunities to reorient away from failed approaches in the past. I will close with a quote from an expert in an article stating that in this modern economy, FDI should not be an article of faith, because without shrewd insertion into value chains of intangibles, a country can host large foreign-owned production facilities and impressive export volumes while capturing only a thin slice of the value created. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Balsillie. Those for members, I know the report that Mr. Balsillie, first round of questions, and we're going to start with Mr. Anderson. Over to you for 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. This question is for Dr. Exner-Perot, Mr. Balsillie. I'd like you to answer it, as well as Mr. Boyd. We've talked a lot about sovereignty. Critical to sovereignty is the actual ownership of the materials. And Pierre Poilievre has talked a lot about using those materials as leverage, as a middle power. We don't have a lot of hard power, but we do have some soft power, and we can use those as leverage. So with respect to critical and rare earth minerals, my primary concern is the monitoring of foreign ownership. Is the current 20 to 25% threshold that triggers review, is that sufficient? Would you answer that, Mr. Balsillie?
I would say control is a complex thing, and as I said, FDI should be carefully monitored, not only for economic spillovers, but for security spillovers. I would also say that owning the minerals does not in and of itself give you leverage if you do not own the ability to turn them into something. So it is the beginning of the potential for leverage, but in and of itself, it's not leverage.
Thank you much. Dr. Exner-Perot?
Yeah, I wish I could say it doesn't depend on the context, because sometimes people just need a number that they can work with and be predictable. But it kind of depends on the context. And I would think probably the most susceptible are junior miners and small projects. And if they, are looking for investment and they would take it from anywhere they can get, where they may not go ahead. If they don't get some investment from some kind of investor, then I think they're susceptible to Chinese investment. And then the other aspect is for some of these niche metals that we talked about, China has a basic monopoly on the process and refining. So at some point you have to work with some Chinese interests because they're going to be the only person taking your offtake. And so I don't want to do this on a case by case, but 20%, maybe, I think Australia does 10% as a threshold. And I think it's much different depending on the size and whether it's publicly owned or privately owned. But absolutely this is a way that the Chinese have used to influence junior mining operations. And I think another, consequence of that people are concerned about, if you did have a project, for example, in the Arctic, and there was Chinese influence, that they could, for example, use their leverage to do, monitoring or jamming or have some presence in the Arctic that might interfere, for example, with NORAD.
More broad-based questions. Mr. Boyd? Mr. Boyd?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I would agree with Heather. It's context. Oh, yeah.
You should do exercises. That's important to our good health. And friends, tomorrow we are going to be visiting with a fisherman who will tell us about his very enjoyable hobby. Now, I would like to see you all through our magic mirror. Romper, bumper, stomper, boo, tell me, do. Magic mirror, please tell me today, did all of my friends have fun at play? I see all of my friends in Alberta. It's nice to see you. And I see Dan and Vivian. I see Marlon and Mona. I see Catherine and Harley. I see Anne and Elizabeth and Jane. I see Bert and Nicole, and I see you too. I hope to see you tomorrow, right here in Romper Room.
Bing bong, knock knock, hey daddy do. Bing bong, tick tock, bebop boom.
Kick off your weekend with exciting CFL action when the Edmonton Eskimos tackle the BC Lions in Vancouver. Tomorrow night at 10:30 on CFTO TV.
You be a